Hello. We are going to talk about America's flag today. In fact, the first story is called America's Flag, and the second story is called Red, White, and Blue, the story of the American flag. America's flag. We call it the red, white, and blue. We call it the stars and stripes, too. These are nicknames for the American flag. You can probably guess why people call the flag by those names. Look at the picture of the flag. What colors do you see? You see red, white, and blue. What patterns do you see? You see stars and stripes. People hang the flag outside their homes on special holidays, such as the 4th of July. That is our country's birthday. Our country has a birthday just like you guys do. On that day, long ago, the American colonies declared their freedom from England. We used to be owned by another country before we became our own country. But you don't have to wait for a holiday. You can fly your flag anytime you want. You can fly your flag, and when you look at it, you can think of what it stands for. It's a symbol of America, and it's a symbol of freedom. So here are the words we need to know for this. One of the words is nicknames. Nicknames are names that aren't what the real name is. For example, United States of America has a nickname USA or America. But if you really want to tell the whole name, you have to say United States of America. Or if you have a name like Joseph and someone calls you Joe. Or if you have a name like Katerina and someone calls you Kat. Those are nicknames. They're not your original name, but they're a name that you use during the day or with your family. All right, so the question we have: what traditions and celebrations involve our country's flag? Because we have things we do special for the flag and days that we celebrate special just around the flag. It goes with the flag. So nicknames is our first word. Flag, I think you know what a flag is. Stars, like what you see in the sky, but you can also make pictures of them. Stripes, it's when lines go this way. Birthday, countries can have birthdays. Oregon has a birthday. Oregon's birthday is on Valentine's Day. Or you can have a birthday. And freedom, that is when you get to make choices and you're not, maybe you could be put in jail if you made a bad choice in another country. If you have freedom, you are allowed to make good choices and people don't come after you. And America, that is the nickname for the United States of America. Here's a couple of pictures that show us some of those things. So there's a map of the United States up at the top, and someone celebrating a birthday, and stars. We know what all those things are, don't we? Red, white, and blue, the story of the American flag. And again, here's our question. What traditions and celebrations involve our country's flag? What special things do we do that the flag is a part of? We all know the American flag. Its bright colors fly at baseball games. It flies at 4th of July parades. We even see it on our clothes. Our flag has lots of nicknames, like Old Glory and the red, white, and blue. Sometimes it's called Stars and Stripes. But where did our flag come from? Who decided what it would look like? The truth is, no one knows for sure. Back in the 1700s, beginning of our country, America didn't have a flag. It didn't need one. It wasn't even a country yet. It was just 13 colonies. That's colonies, kind of an area of land, maybe more like a state. The colonies belonged to England, the King of England. The English flag flew in towns from New Hampshire to Georgia. But as time went by, the 13 colonies didn't want to belong to England anymore. Americans decided they were going to fight for freedom. They didn't want the king telling them how to live their lives. They wanted to make their own choices. A war began. This war was called the American Revolution. Now a new flag was needed, an American flag. So here you see the flag there at the baseball game. And there are the original 13 colonies that actually turned into the original 13 states. Who made our first flag? Well, some people say it was a woman named Betsy Ross. Maybe you've heard of her. Betsy Ross owned a sewing shop in Philadelphia. That's in Pennsylvania. She was famous for her sewing. The story is that one day a general came to see her. The general was George Washington. George Washington was a general before he was a president. He was the head of the American Army. General Washington wanted a new flag. It would make his soldiers feel like a real army fighting for a real country. He wanted Betsy Ross to make this flag, so he drew a picture of what he wanted. This is what they say he drew. See the red and white stripes and the stars in a circle? The reason there's only that many stars is because back then there were only 13 colonies, so there's 13 stars there. Betsy Ross made some changes. Then she showed the picture to General Washington. He liked it. Betsy Ross sewed the flag. And that was the very first Stars and Stripes, the very first American flag. That is the story, and it's a good one. But is it true? Betsy Ross's grandson said it was. He said Betsy told him the story when she was a little boy, and when he was a little boy, and she was an old woman of 84. But there's really no proof for that story, so what do we know for sure? We know that during the Revolution, the colonists used a lot of different flags. So these were all the kinds of flags they used when they were fighting against England. But once the colonies became the United States of America, the country needed one flag, the same flag for everybody. So on June 14, 1777, a decision was made. The flag was going to have 13 red and white stripes going this way. The flag was also going to have 13 white stars on a blue background, so the little stars that we saw in the circle, one for each of the 13 colonies. Now the United States had a flag. Congress had picked the colors and the stars and stripes, but Congress did not say where the stars and stripes had to go, so the flag still didn't look the same. People could put them any way they liked. Sometimes the stripes were up and down. Sometimes the stars were in a circle, but nobody minded. Up and down or side to side, the stars and stripes still stood for the United States. So here's some early flags where they weren't quite sure which direction they wanted things to be in. Over the years, the flag became more and more important to people. In 1812, the United States was at war with England again, so they're fighting them a second time. British soldiers came to America and they sailed up our rivers. They marched down our streets. They even burned down the White House, the home of the president. And that is when the White House was on fire. So the one you see now in Washington, D.C. isn't the same White House. They rebuilt it. On the night of September 13th, 1814, British soldiers bombed a fort in Maryland. All that night, a man watched the fighting, and his name was Francis Scott Key. He was afraid. What if the American soldiers in the fort gave up? But in the early morning light, he saw the stars and stripes, so he saw the flag. It was still flying above the fort. He knew the American soldiers had won the battle. He felt very proud. So he wrote a poem about a flag that he saw on the fort. The poem was called the StarSpangled Banner. Later, that poem was put to music. They added music to it. This song about our flag became a song for our whole country. So here's the battle, and here's the fort where the flag is, and in the morning, that man there in the circle, or in the oval, could still see that flag flying, and so he wrote a poem. The flag that Francis Scott Key had 15 stripes and 15 stars. Why 15? Well, there were 2 more states, so they had a star for Vermont and a star for Kentucky. So in 1814, now there were 15 states. At the beginning, there were only 13. Our country was getting bigger and people were headed out west. In time, more places were going to want to be states. Soon there would be too many stars to fit on the flag. Congress had to do something. So in 1818, this is what was decided. The flag would go back to 13 red and white stripes because they couldn't keep adding stripes. There would be too many. And in the blue box would be 1 star for each state. Every time there was a new state, a new star would be added. So in this flag over here, there's actually 15 stars and stripes. But then they decided we're going to leave it at 13 because we got too many more states to add. Stripes would be too skinny. At last, the stars and stripes looked the same everywhere it flew, and Americans were proud of their flag. They took the flag with them as they moved west. The flag crossed the Mississippi River and the great grassy plains and the Rocky Mountains, and it made all the way to California. More and more states were added to the country, and more stars were added to the flag. By 1837, there were 26 stars on the flag. In 1850, there were 31. So all the ones kind of over here are all the states are talking about. The other part, basically where you can see it says Oregon Territory, it wasn't a state yet. That hadn't happened. One country, one flag. But then in 1861, something happened. Our country split in two. 11 states in the South broke away from the United States of America. They started their own country, and they called it the Confederate States of America. Abraham Lincoln was president of the United States, and he said all the states needed to stay together. War broke out again. This one was called the Civil War. It was a very sad time in the history of our country. The 11 southern states stopped flying the Stars and Stripes. They made their own flag. In the North, some people wanted 11 stars taken off their Stars and Stripes flags. But Abraham Lincoln would not do that. He said the states would get back together. He was right. The Civil War ended in 1865. The North won, and the United States was one country under one flag again. So here's the flag they made when the South decided they wanted to be separate. And here's the flag that they had at the end of the war for all of them being together. On June 14, 1877, the flag had a birthday. A big one. The flag was 100 years old. All across the country, people had picnics and parties and parades. June 14th became a holiday called Flag Day. We still have that holiday. Today, our flag has 50 stars for the 50 United States of America. Some flags are huge. There's one in Forest Grove that's huge. One weighs 500 pounds. It is flown every 4th of July, and it hangs on the George Washington Bridge. The American flag flies in towns and cities from coast to coast. And that's not all. In 1969, 2 American astronauts were the first people ever to land on the moon. The astronauts took lots of moon rocks back to Earth. They also left something on the moon, the Stars and Stripes. And you know what? Our flag is still flying on the moon. So here's the one they hang on the bridge every year. That's in New York City. And here is the one from the astronauts. I hope you liked our story. I'll see you tomorrow.